Good evening, everyone. Still bopping, as always. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode number 82 of Restitching the Tapestry. It's great to be here. It's been one heck of a week. There's been a lot going on this week. We'll be talking about a whole variety of things tonight, as you might imagine. But before we get on to any of that, obviously we're going to talk about what we've been doing and how we've been doing and all that. So Heather, what have you been up to? How have you been?
It has been a week and a half, I swear. I think it was a week made up of all Mondays. I really
Oh,
do. Just every single day there was something. So just a lot going on with family, a lot going on at work. Although I did get my hair cut today for the first time in 2.5 years. And
oh,
it's
and isn't it so
so
cute,
short.
everyone?
It's so short. It was almost all the way down to my butt. And I got it chopped off today.
Oh my gosh, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Almost.
goodness.
And you, how was your week?
Well, I've been kind of feeling the constant time loop Mondays as well. Honestly, I've not really gotten over that since the pandemic. I still don't really know what day it is sometimes. Like, I'll wake up and be like, oh, it's Tuesday. And then somebody will be like, no, it's Friday. And I'll be like,
I
where am I?
love Friday.
I know.
So before we continue, I just have to say something. As I was watching the intro with the lady, stitching and stuff, I realized it's really ironic that we have that on there when I can't sew a stitch. It's really ironic, you got this
Oh, I can't
woman's
either.
hands beautifully sewing whatever they're sewing, and it's like I'm looking at that going, yeah, I can't sew crap.
But see, we're not physically restitching. We
This is
are
true.
socially and intellectually and educationally restitching.
Yeah, this is true. This
And the
is
fabric is society. Granted, right now the fabric is on fire, let's just say.
yeah, inside of a dumpster covered with, flies
Floating down a river.
floating down a river. Yeah,
Yeah.
Both wars gone.
And oh my gosh, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I've been actually writing lately. I've been doing some writing. I've been very active on TikTok. I've been doing at least like 2 or 3 TikTok videos every day. Those are only like a minute or two, so those are super easy.
Yeah.
So if anybody's not followed me on TikTok yet, I'm Donny Winter Official on TikTok. So all right, so let's see who we have here so far. It looks like Arby is here. Hello, Arby. It's good to see you. Leo says, "Hey, Donnie, I'm so sorry. I've been spotty with attendance. I've been all over the place and trying to make things take things one step at a time." Hey, if you have to, you have to. We totally understand.
Yep.
Plus, if you're always welcome to come back and rewatch it. That's why they stay up on the YouTube channel, right? And Leo also says, "I'm fine otherwise, just trying to take a mental health day, and here are some praying hands for you." Taylor's here, and Taylor is boiling my cups. Good cup maintenance entertainment. Oh my goodness. But honestly, despite how hectic the week has been, I feel mentally pretty well, mental health wise. So I've had my moments. There's been a lot going on this week, but
Mhm.
we'll talk about that here in just a moment. So I'm going to go through our show's mission statement really quickly, and then we will get on to chatting about being an ally tonight, okay? We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing. So, all right, let's talk about current events, sadly. So, as most of you are aware, I mean, aside from me talking about it here on YouTube in a video, it's been circulating the internet. But the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade, which is causing some significant waves, and now individual states have essentially the ability to enforce any type of bans they might have with regard to reproductive health. I've heard that there are a couple of states, Florida and Texas, where of course they were preparing for this, right? But I heard that a judge in those states has blocked any type of anti-reproductive right access that they might be doing. So that's good, right? Right now, I think the big issue is that, like, I know President Biden and Congress has been debating, codifying safe access to reproductive rights as law through Congress. We don't know if that's going to happen. Hopefully it does. I really don't know what to expect. Heather, what are your like? How are you reacting to all this stuff?
Not great. I'm not gonna lie. I unfortunately, I've lost 2 children to miscarriage. My second child, unfortunately, was a tubal. So we had to make the hard decision, and we were told that basically if we tried to move the egg to where it belonged, the success rate for both the baby and me was basically 0. It wasn't, it's like 1 in a Googleplex type situation that we would have survived. And it was a definite 100% that if it stayed where it was at, I was not going to survive. It is the hardest choice I've ever made in my entire life. But we had to stop the pregnancy, just for survival. And my first baby, we don't really even know if it really was a baby. It might have been what's called a blighted ovum, which is basically a false pregnancy. Although I will go to my grave knowing I was pregnant. I will go to my grave knowing that. But as somebody who's gone through this has brought up a lot of, to be honest, I've been trying to ignore it. I can't. It's a very hard topic for me to talk about. Yeah. The Roe versus Wade situation, because it's way too close to home. I lost my first baby in 2018. I lost my second baby in 2020. It's something that almost rips me in half to talk about.
Yeah. So. Well, you don't have to talk any further about it. Like, I appreciate you sharing what you did, because it takes bravery to do that. But it just is, it's proof that access to safe reproductive health is important, because literally it could mean life and death for people. And also we're not considering the fact that there are, communities that may not have access to any of that, and they may resort to more dangerous methods.
Yep.
So yeah. And Taylor also says this week has been very hard. Yeah. Well, and it's scary, especially when you have to worry about how uncertain the future is with regard to all of this, But so we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that has been happening, and to let everyone know that we will do what we can as allies to support and empower people, and advocate for what will be the best outcome through all of this. So Ari's here. Ari says, I'm really sorry you went through all of that. Any decision you made is the right decision, because you know your body.
Oh, thank you, honey. You make me cry.
Yes, it's so true. But I think we are going to be talking about being an ally tonight, and we're going to include our conversation about allyship to include communities that need access to reproductive health, because right now those communities need allies fighting alongside them in order to hopefully get some sort of legislation that reverses what just happened. So and Taylor says, sure love religious definitions being forced upon my and my daughter's lives. Essentially, that's kind of what it is, unfortunately, yes. So, all right, so let's talk a little, let's generally, I mean, we're not going to talk about allies yet because Heather and I got to do something really cool this past week that we wanted to chat about too. So this is a slightly more uplifting portion of our conversation. But Heather and I got to go to Pride this past weekend. So, Heather, how did it go for you?
Oh my God. I had so much fun. I mean, it was just, so we were both, Donny and I were both there selling our books through the publisher the company that we work with that sells our books for us. And anyway, it was just, so, talking about my poetry book and my fantasy novels with people was amazing. But even if you remove that part of it, I had an absolute blast. It was so amazing to be in an area with all of these people and to watch people be free, to be themselves in a way that unfortunately outside of a Pride festival, they might either have to hide or change to avoid, being ostracized. I mean, it was a blast. It really was. I met so many amazing people. And what was really cool for me as a Christian was that there were a lot of other Christians there. It was like, I went up to them. I wanted to give them hugs, which I didn't, of course, the whole, 6-foot distance thing. But I mean, I wanted to give them hugs. It's like, yes. But yeah, I did. And I could have literally, I'm a people watcher, love to watch people. I could have sat on a bench and just conversed with people and watched people all day long. It was just so much fun.
I'm so glad that you had a good time. Here's a couple of pictures that we got from the event as well. So Heather, who is this wonderful woman that you're with in this photo, we should give her a shameless self-plug too.
Yes. She is also an independent author, just like I am. Her name is Amanda Dinkle. Amazing author. She writes young adult fiction. So yeah, just definitely shout out to Amanda. It was a blast hanging out with her. We had a good time.
I accidentally changed the background of the whole thing. I am not having a fun tech night tonight. Here's mine. I set up my, this is my little table. Heather and I both sold a lot of books. So we are.
No. You have to talk about your books. He sold out, everybody.
Oh my goodness.
Sold every single book. He sold 29 poetry books.
I'm still kind of mind boggled by that. Don't get me, I'm grateful for it. I was not expecting it at all whatsoever, but I'm just it was really nice. I think my favorite part of it was just being able to meet other LGBTQ plus people, people who were really excited and motivated about writing. And because I would say that most of the people that came up to talk to me were writers. They were all people who basically were like, oh my gosh, I'm interested in writing, and I want some networking connections, etc. And that's honestly what my goal was, because truthfully, it's kind of challenging for LGBTQ plus writers because there aren't a lot of people who will publish their work or encourage them, etc. So they don't have a lot of opportunities. So I guess one of my goals is to try to provide some form of opportunity for people, so.
Yeah, I had a similar situation when I was selling, because we were there at different times. We each had a time slot. But at any rate, I had a similar situation. I had a lot of young writers coming up and, asking questions and things like that. So yeah. The other thing I learned from this, bring sunblock. I am a lobster. Oh my God, my arms are so bad. So burned.
I looked like a lizard yesterday because my nose was peeling. Like I had to like put moisturizer on my nose because I didn't want to go out in public and be all like scaly. it was really bad.
Yeah, we both got so burnt. It was awful.
And it's funny because I learned like a couple of weeks ago I got like really, really bad sunburn. So I bought like 3 things of sunscreen so I would have one in my car, in my bag, like everywhere. I forgot all of them.
Yeah. I brought a hat, as you saw from the picture, but I totally did not even think. I just didn't. I'm like, oh, we'll be under a tent. It'll be just fine.
Oh no, we were certainly not under a tent.
Yeah, like 1st-degree burns on my shoulders, but it was worth it.
It literally felt like I was walking on the surface of Mercury.
It was so hot.
It was worth it though. I did have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Hi, Kaishana. It's good to see you.
Yay!
Taylor says Scaly King and his lobster queen.
Yeah, basically.
That's going to be like our names on here from now on. I don't know. Somebody might tune into the episode and be like, what's this about? If they see that. Godzilla Kiru is here. Hello, my friend. It's good to see you. Okay. Heather. Let's talk about being an ally, shall we?
Yes.
Are we ready?
Yep.
So let's talk about what it means to be an ally. So I will go first if you're okay with that. So for me, being an ally is essentially a person who might not be a part of a specific marginalized community or non-marginalized community, but a person who goes out of their way to listen to said community, advocate for them, take action on behalf of them or with them, and also do what they can to learn about said community, right? That's my definition of what it means to be an ally. Heather, do you have any, is yours similar or different, or?
How can I add to that? That was like perfect. That's impossible to improve upon. Let me think. It's funny, we've talked about in previous, episodes about, what it means to be an ally. And up until you called me that, I didn't know that's what I was. For me, I guess it just boils down to being a friend.
Yeah.
Being, because that's, that I love and adore you. You're my friend. And so if you want to call me an ally on top of that, cool. I'm an ally too. But to me, it's kind of the same thing, tomato thing. It's just being a friend.
Well, and I think being an ally, I mean, it's being a friend, but it's also caring about what that person and their community is going through, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like for you as an ally, you've been so open and engaging with regard to what's happening in the LGBTQ plus community. Lately, I've been trying to make my effort at doing the same for communities who are now under threat of being denied access to reproductive rights, etc. And I think that in many ways, we all act as an ally to a certain degree. Yes. I do think there is a difference between being a conditional ally versus an unconditional ally. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit because there's a whole segment that I have about that.
Yeah.
I do want to check out this chat really quickly. So Kaishana says, I feel anyone isn't an ally when they support one day and then 1 month they go off to continue to token and profit from disabled individuals or other marginalized groups. Yes.
Oh, yes.
That absolutely. Kind of connects to that like conditional versus unconditional allyship. Yeah. Godzilla Kiru asks us how we've been doing. I've been doing well.
Me too. Good to see you.
Let's see. Taylor says, married to a person of color, I'm struck by how much of an ally I've had to become because obviously I don't see him differently and I just see how differently the world saw him. That's so important, right?
Yes.
Because those of us with some array of privilege, right? Like because of that, like we aren't often impacted by what might impact those communities. So when we see it happening in front of our eyes, it's almost jarring, right? Like
Yeah.
we see it happening and we're just like, oh my, like that's terrible, right? I'm glad that you mentioned that, Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think being an ally, RP says, involves being with the LGBTQ plus community and not over them. Yes.
Yep.
Agreed.
Well put.
RP
Yep.
says, I've had burgers more supreme than the Supreme Court.
Okay, that was good.
That did kind of break me. And thank you. I'm glad you like my pride shirt. That was really funny. Ooh.
Oh yeah, that was good.
With how heavy things have been lately, I think a good laugh is in order,
Yeah,
right?
we needed that. Thank you.
It's funny because I, as a homosexual, stop motion and stuff is here. Hello. Welcome. I'm glad that you like it. Thanks. Yes, you made me snort. So it's interesting. I think a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community, because we're already in a marginalized community, kind of have like this headspace where we don't really think of ourselves as allies at all. But because I've had this conversation with a few people recently, we are allies because those of us, even in the LGBTQ plus community, have certain arrays of privilege that prevent us from experiencing some of the atrocities other communities face, right? Like, for example, I'm white and I am cisgender, so I don't experience any of the, discrimination that BIPOC individuals in the community might face, or the trans and non-binary communities, etc. So there's like, because of that, like I had myself to learn a bit more about how I'm unaffected by certain things and what I can do to make sure that I don't fall into the trap of doing the same thing that a lot of other privileged people do, which involves minimizing other groups, erasing them, silencing them, or even just flat out discriminating against them, right? So, and it's not a comfortable process. I was talking to a person a couple of weeks ago because we were having a conversation about LGBTQ plus rights, and they got like really uncomfortable about it. And because they didn't get uncomfortable because they aren't, allies, they got uncomfortable because they didn't like to think about the fact that they sometimes minimize what other people are going through. Because this person was like, Donny, you don't have to always make it about rights and everything all the time. It doesn't have to always be political. That's what they said specifically. And I responded with, when we are at a point where we can say something like that, that means that we have an array of privilege allowing us to say that, like a point of safety. And my goal, like in having conversations about that, isn't to shame people, but to kind of use it as an educational moment to be like, hey, like, here is how our privilege kind of does this to us. Here's some tools we can work with to better ourselves. Accountability can be very uncomfortable, but once we get to that point, it gets a lot easier. And I think that once we can do that, we can be better allies for other people.
I agree.
Yeah, Taylor says people get so scared by the word privilege. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because, and mind you, like this has been happening for like 4 or 5, well, a long time, but for the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like the word privilege has been used a lot more, right, in these different conversations. And the big issue I've noticed is that people don't understand that there are different types of privilege, right? There's like racial privilege, there is cis privilege, there's heterosexual privilege, there's classist privilege, right? that a lot of people don't really often think about. So understanding like the intersections between these different things can be a little uncomfortable for those who've not looked at it from that perspective, right? Let's see. Arpy says, I appreciate allies, but they are not part of the LGBTQ plus community. Yes. I mean, they're not in the LGBTQ plus community, but I think with the way the dynamic works, we kind of work together as a family of sorts. I look at it as like a booster pack. Oh, I've got a new advantage to use. All right, let's use it to advance the team. And Taylor says Christian privilege as well. Yes, I do think that there, like when it comes to like larger religions, there are privileges that many of them have, right? Where they might be dismissive of marginalized groups, especially. So, and I know when I have experiences where I am able to connect with Christians who are aware of that and who go above and beyond and being an ally like you, Heather, and like, you know, my friend Cindy, like it's really empowering, I think, to see that. It's really uplifting to see that, you know. So I know my friend Cindy is always, she always says that it seems as though like bad Christians are always the loudest because they're always the ones who are willing to say the most hurtful things, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I know like for me, one of my biggest obstacles was that I would often see good Christians in my life stand by and watch the bad Christians say horrible things and not do anything, kind of like this bystander effect. So being an ally is action. Being ally is a verb, right? I think we mentioned that
is a verb.
We mentioned that a couple of episodes
ago.
a
couple episodes ago. Yeah, it's a verb. It's you don't sit on your butt. And once again, I mean, that action can be anything. It can be listening. It can be going to actual, you know, well, like the Pride Festival, or I mean, just being there for somebody can mean being an ally, you know?
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about some different ways that we can be better allies as well. And, well, and I think like the conversation is especially important right now with, you know, what's been happening recently, because I feel like a lot of people who didn't realize they needed allies are now realizing that they do need allies, if that makes sense. Because when one group of people is targeted, especially a group as all-encompassing as those who need access to reproductive health, right? Like, what group, you know, is safe anymore? At least that's the kind of like the worry that I've been seeing and hearing, etc. So Taylor says, if they stand by, they are just as bad. Yes, I feel that way about any bystander when it comes to like bullying situations. Now, mind you, I do acknowledge that there is like a bystander does have to consider their own safety too. Like if they feel like they would be placed in an unsafe situation, that I think matters to a certain degree. But Taylor says, to play devil's advocate heavily, you can't die on every hill. You can't fight for every cause. You will drown. And at times, you have to choose what you can stand for. Yes, that is a great point. It kind of, I don't know if you guys remember the video I did a few weeks ago. I did a video about like bandwidth, right? Like we kind of have to like assess our bandwidth. Like I know personally, like I am usually the type of person that's like very gung-ho about advocating and being an activist, but I have moments where I have to take a step back and be like, I don't have the psychological bandwidth to advocate at this very moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's like she said, you really do have to pick your battles sometimes. You know, if your safety is, you know, basically, it kind of depends on where you're at, who you're with. I mean, if it's going to be an unsafe situation, I mean, there's that old saying, you can't fix stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's no hope for it, sometimes it's better to say, okay, you go left, I'll go right. Let's just move on with
Well,
life.
yeah, and it's a very delicate balance, right?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
because there are people who, like, you can waver from either side. Like, you can, like, just completely exhaust yourself
Hmm.
by advocating constantly at your own expense, or you can be the other extreme and always kind of concoct an excuse to not do something,
Right.
like, and don't get me wrong, like, I feel like people should be listened to if there is a reason, why they
Hmm.
might not be advocating, but you can also quickly tell when it's something that's crafted, at least,
Right.
you know.
I think it's also something about the person maybe that you're with or the situation that you're in for how much you want to put into that. Like, for example, I was talking to my brother earlier today. It's kind of interesting we're on this topic because we were talking about defending your family essentially, or defending people you love from bullying or things like this. And you know basically you can say anything you want about me, whatever, but you say anything about my family or my friends and it's on. So I think that's the other thing. I think it's about being an ally is defending people you care for. Like if
Yeah.
you and I are out someplace and somebody were to come up and make a comment to you, it's on. It
You
is
would
on. There will be
annihilate
no
them.
survivors verbally.
Well, and
You know.
likewise, if anybody ever did that to you, like, I'd be like, oh hell, like, I would be like throwing a chair, like, it'd go viral somewhere.
Oh,
Like,
I love it. I love it. But and I
uh,
think that's kind of something we have to add in here too. Going back to what Taylor said is, you know, do you know the person? Now, should you stand up even if you don't? Absolutely. I'm not saying you shouldn't,
right.
but I think the strength of your allyship is also based upon the person you're being an ally for.
Well, yeah, and
Like,
also assessing the situation. Like, I feel like, I mean, mind you, like, as an LGBTQ plus person, and I'm sure you've experienced this as a woman, like, depending on what spaces you're in, where you're at, who
mhm,
you're around, you have to, like, assess the environment and the situation to determine if it would be safe enough to say some specific thing, or,
right.
and I'm not gonna lie, like, I've been in situations where, I've wanted to call a person out for, say, like, saying a gay slur or something like that, but then I'm
Mhm.
realizing, like, oh my gosh, I'm standing in my rural hometown. Like,
Yeah.
do I want to risk this because it might result in me being in danger? I think
Right.
that's, for me, that's what's been very unsettling about the last month, is because, like, physically I have felt more unsafe than I have since, like, high
Yeah.
school. Um to the point where I don't even feel comfortable, you know, being in a rural setting because of it.
Mhm.
And likewise, like, I was talking to one of my friends who um is in the trans community, and they were saying that both as a woman and as a person in the trans community, especially right now after what's happened, they
Yeah.
feel like even more unsafe.
Oh my God, my heart goes out to them totally and
Yeah.
completely. And we had talked, previously, it's like about privilege. And yes, I have been bullied horribly in my life for a variety of things. The biggest thing I've ever been bullied for is being a heavier set woman. But yes, horribly bullied. But that is one thing I will own is that I have never, because of my privilege, I am a heterosexual white person. I have never experienced what somebody from the LGBTQ plus community experiences just walking into a building and people, I mean, and it was something that I didn't notice until you and I became close that it was something I never thought about. And now I'm like, if anybody, even does that. So it's something that, I feel ashamed that I have that privilege, and I was never aware that I had it. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm learning to grow from that. I want to be a better person. I
Right,
want to be
right.
more aware of that. And yes, there's still things that I absolutely do not experience because of who I am and what I look like. And that's, in a way, it's kind of heartbreaking to know that I have people around me that I love and adore that, you know, I'll never truly be able to walk in those shoes, you know.
Right. Well, I think at the end of the day, though, what matters is that people try.
Hmm.
Like people try to do that because like I mean, I have friends, like I will never understand what it feels like to be an individual in a community who's impacted by lack of access to reproductive rights right now. Like I there's no way I could understand that feeling other than beyond like seeing what I'm seeing and listening to what people are saying
Yeah.
and hearing stories about people who've had access to this care, like your situation,
Hmm.
life and death situations.
Yeah.
So and that's like and I've kind of felt some shame over that too, but at the end of the day it's what we choose to do with that shame that I think really matters
Right.
as people with privilege, right? Like
Hmm.
there are people who have that shame who are like they get like really retaliatory and they
Hmm.
almost weaponize their shame, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But then there are people like all of us here where we are, here to learn together, to take something away and to,
Hmm.
grow as individuals, but grow when it comes to our connections with other people too.
Absolutely. And Taylor had mentioned earlier, and I did see the sorry Heather comment. Don't worry about it, honey. You mentioned the thing about Christian privilege. It is a real thing. It is
Hmm.
a real thing. Taylor's 100% right. I've seen it. I don't know if I don't know if I've ever felt it per se, but I have seen it. And so I guess at least in that way, I could say I've experienced it. But with the world changing and growing, I do see a lot of people that are of my faith that feel threatened because all of a sudden there's all these new religions and these new whatevers, and there are a lot of people in the Christian community that are threatened by LGBTQ plus people, which is freaking ridiculous.
Hmm.
It's we're
Well,
all
and
on this
they're
planet together.
well,
Let's
yeah. Well, and the thing is, they feel threatened for a reason. They feel threatened because they've spent their entire lives learning that we are an abomination, right? Like when you
exactly.
spend that much time learning something like that, it's like a conditioning when you
It
think about
is. It
it, right?
absolutely is.
It takes a lot of time to unlearn that. So
Hmm.
I do want to catch
Well,
up on the comments. Oh, go
oh,
ahead, Heather.
I was just gonna say, and then we'll go to the comments. It's like I've said it before. This is my mantra. You will never convince me that love in any color, shape, size is wrong. You will never convince me of that. Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Nope.
yeah. Mm. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to find where I was. I
Yeah.
like lost my
We
track
got
in
a
the
little wordy and
comments.
we lost track. Sorry, guys. I'm sure your comments are amazing. We got a little
Let's
talking.
see. Taylor says the lowest level of effort is voting, and that's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Arby says, Donnie, I'd so give somebody a piece of my mind if they messed with you, and likewise. Taylor says, my husband flat out refuses to go below the Mason-Dixon line. It's a constant duty to remind my family as they try to plan vacations down there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
You know,
bet they
it's
don't even think about it.
yeah, it's
They just,
interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting talking about going to these places where we know that we're not 100% safe. Um, I know my partner and I, when we've gone up north, uh, like we don't really kiss, we don't hold hands, We kind of try to overmasculate ourselves sometimes. We try to like dress differently. Like it's very code switchy, because we don't always feel safe, right? And that could be a whole nother episode. Like we could talk about code switching, about how we change ourselves to fit the people that we're around.
Yeah, chameleons.
Yeah, exactly. But I think being like, if we circulate this back to being an ally, I think as an ally continues to grow, that's one thing they begin to recognize as well. Like I know you, Heather, have pointed out to me when I've changed like the pitch of my voice.
Yep.
You've been like, wow, Donny, like you sounded like super straight. Like I know like when I'm teaching, I do that, especially if it's a brand new class. Because like subliminally I just feel unsafe because when I meet new people. But you'll notice like as I go through the semester, my voice will kind of reach this normal pitch and not be like it's hard to replicate it unless I'm like in that actual situation.
Yeah. You use the word learn, because I am, if you are a real ally, you're always going to be learning something new. I learned, and I'm going to talk about it. I am so ashamed that this happened. But I didn't know. I did not know any better. I did a human library event. I don't know. What did we say, honey? About 3 months ago now? 4 months ago? Yeah, something like that. And there was a transgender student who had come and was doing, because we all broke up into little tables and we all did our own little presentations. And I went to this student's table, and they said their name, which I'm not going to say here, of course. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, so, and then they talked about, going to some of the just fell right out of my head.
Like the therapy, like
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. And how they had paid for their own surgery and everything, for correctiveness. And I asked the student, oh, what was your name before? And it was explained to me that you don't ask that question because that is that's past life. It doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of like the butterfly in the cocoon type situation. And I was so upset that I had inadvertently hurt this poor kid, not knowing. And I went back to the student, when the event was over, and I apologized. And I'm like, I'm so sorry if I caused you any kind of trauma or anything. I didn't know. And the student was like, oh no, it's not a big deal, but it's something I'm always learning. So if I say something or get something backwards or whatever, please let me know. It's okay. I'm not going to be, I'm going to be more upset if I continually say something stupid.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, and see, I'm sure that they appreciated that you corrected yourself, that you eventually went back to them and apologized, because that says so much, right?
Yeah.
It's something similar happened to me about a year ago, actually. And here I am thinking that I am honed as an activist and so on and so forth. I shared I don't know, like my one friend who's trans and I, like, we shared I shared like a memory on Facebook, and it was of us, and it was a picture of them before they had transitioned. And they messaged me and they were like, hey, can you delete this photo? I don't feel comfortable with it. And or at least, I don't think they said delete it, but like, can you like unshare, like delete the post? You keep the photo, but delete the post, right?
Got it. Okay.
And I was just like, I had this moment where I was just like, oh shit. Like I didn't think about that because of my privilege, right? I didn't think about how someone who is the person they are, who they've always wanted to be now, how they would feel about seeing that person that they were, that like dead person, like that dead name, that dead person, etc.
Right.
So, and that was like, I really had to wrangle with that shame for a few days. Like I apologized profusely. I I think I like cried about it. I was just like, oh my
Oh,
God.
honey.
You know, but like that's part of the learning.
Yep.
That's part of the learning. It's not always
Absolutely.
comfortable, but we got to do it. Right.
And that's why I'm so happy so many people now will put in there, like we've got the pronouns he, him, his, and she, her. I'm so glad people say what their pronouns are, because I don't want to call somebody what they're not.
Right.
So whether the pronoun is he, she, or they, or any combination, I want to call that person who they are.
Right. Yeah,
So
100%. Because that's like the biggest form of respect and one of the biggest reflections of one's identity. Yeah.
exactly.
Let's see. Godzilla Kiryu says, I know how you feel, Donnie. I'd feel unsafe in some places because of me being a trans dude.
Oh, honey. Yeah.
And as well as being on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Taylor says, I've noticed as an educator, there's an inherent toll in being an ally. I get comments on my student evaluations about it. How so? Like, does it connect back to like that bandwidth thing that we were talking about? I'm curious about what you mean by that. Let's see. Stop motion and stuff says that's hard. At least you're not a minor like me and have to deal with family members that come over all the time and they always question why I have nail polish and they don't support LGBTQ plus. I'm really sorry that you go through that.
Yeah, me too, honey.
Like that. If there's, I mean, I don't really know if there is any form of comfort that works in a situation like that, but know that we are here for you.
Absolutely.
That in this space, we value you for who you are and celebrate that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? Paint everything with nail polish. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I like painting nails is one of my favorite things to do. I don't do it as often as I want to because I'm kind of messy when I do it. Like I am not graceful when I paint my, like I'm like dumping it on my desk. Like it's a time. Motion and stuff also says like my grandma, she always says TMI whenever I try to tell her, and she had a doctor that was a lesbian and she warned my mom like she was a threat. Luckily my mom supports LGBTQ people. I'm glad that your mom is supportive.
Yeah, I agree. But I do know what stop motion and stuff is saying, you know, the being warned. I unfortunately have family members that even though they know that one of my dearest friends is, you know, LGBT, they warn me, oh, well, you know, we don't want to go to this place. There's a lot of gay people there. Like, you know, demons have infested the building. And it's you know, oh, honey, you're an infestation, apparently. It's like, are you kidding me?
Wait, if I'm an infestation, that means there's more than one of me and I could get work done.
Oh, I wish we could clone you. I mean,
sign me up.
I mean, seriously, everybody, come on. Could you think of like a dozen Donnie clones?
Honey, I don't know if the world could deal with that.
The world is not ready. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
The world is not ready to deal with that level of ass hattery. Trust me.
I say fabulous. You say ass hattery. That's
Taylor says, I'm trying to get out of my habit of saying thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. That's one thing that I'm working on too.
You know what? I never thought about that. Yeah. Thank you, Taylor. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, like I really.
Yeah.
Or like for me, like a very common thing that gay men say to each other, we're always calling each other sis, like, hey sis. And I have to be like not everybody is like a sister. Like you don't call everybody sis because they might not be comfortable with that, right? Let's see. Taylor says discomfort is where we grow. Yeah, I like that. That's like a frameable quote.
Yes.
A frameable quote.
You should get t-shirts made.
Oh, right. Taylor says toll as in the conservative students get pissed and take it out on you. Oh, yes.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, you've had to deal with some doozies. Yeah. It's funny because at sometimes like I've had students, like I don't talk about politics in class really, unless it's in the context of what we're talking about with regard to like a reading or an assignment, right? But like I will have students who will be like just assume that I'm liberal because I'm gay. I mean, being gay and conservative is kind of an enigma, but that's besides the point. But like there's kind of like these filters that are placed over us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Stop Motion says thank you. You're welcome.
Yes,
You're
absolutely.
welcome. Let's see. And this has happened despite tolerance and safety being university policy, of course. Self-care, Don. Get some manicures. We should paint our nails next time we see each other, like a little nail painting get together.
You do an entire episode, just
nail painting, right? Oh, Arby, you're so kind. Thank you. Thank you. So let's talk about some ways that we can better be allies, right? So I have a list that I created, but I also have a list from a source that I'm going to be talking about. We're going to be comparing to see like the consistencies, right? So my thoughts on like some methods for being a better ally. Number one would be listening.
Yes.
Listening is important because oftentimes people with privilege will talk over other people and not give other people opportunities or not even invite other people to talk, right? That's something that I've had to learn myself because you know me, I am a chatterbox. But knowing like when to listen and when to respond in a situation where you are talking about things like this, that's so important, right? That's why I always tell like Ari and Heather and stuff like just cut me off if I'm talking too much, just cut me off.
You're fine.
Oh. Advocating. Advocating would mean like standing up for that person, their community, etc. Advocating can take on many different forms, and these are the other methods which all I would say are included under the umbrella term of advocacy. Attending events, like educational events, supporting nonprofits, like quality nonprofits that support that community, attending protests or situations where people are, educating or raising their voices about an issue, cause, or situation. But note, I also have next to like protests, like speaking out with said community, but not speaking over said community, right?
Or maybe even for, because you can, like I said, you can't walk that mile in somebody else's shoes.
Right. That's why like raising our voices with is so important. Like, I mean, if we think of our contexts, like I would never try to assume or speak on behalf of those who are being denied rights to reproductive health right now. Like, because again, that's not something that affects me. So what right do I have to speak for those people? Right. Taylor says, gotta go. Oh, thank you for joining us. Thank you for that amazing quote, by the way, too. It'll forever go down in history as being a great chat quote.
Yep.
Some other things, educating / standing up to misinformation or misinterpretation. The last two are super important because so many people with privilege will perpetuate misinformation or perpetuate the way that they misinterpret groups of people. Yes. And that can be very damaging because if other people are very receptive to that then they kind of like suck that up like a sponge. Right? So not good at all.
No.
So the list that I found from Syracuse University, 8 ways to be a better ally. They have at number 1, research, and more research. Very important.
Yes, I agree with that.
Number 2, listen. Okay, so that's
Yep,
a
that
consistent one that we
agrees.
have. Yep. Don't practice performative allyship. Yes.
Ooh.
So performative allyship would be doing it because that's what's expected of you, or doing
Right.
it for like I'm being altruistic, blah 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 blah. Like
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
because you're making it about you and not that group of people.
Right. Exactly. I call it being fake as press on nails. Yep.
Like apparently nails are just our
Yeah,
theme
nails is the
tonight.
thing. Yeah.
I love that. We should have painted our nails for this.
We should
It's
have.
the last day of Pride Month. I should have painted my like rainbow nails or something.
That would have been great. Mm-hmm.
Why the hell did I not do that? Let's see. Speak up in your own social circles. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a person of privilege, we have access to social circles that other groups of people do not. So this source specifically is referencing BIPOC people, like Black, Indigenous people of color, because this was published in like 2020 when a lot of when the conversation was at the forefront,
Right.
should still be at the forefront in my opinion. But like, for example, if you hear people saying racist or derogatory language, take some time at your next family reunion to challenge people's beliefs and speak up for those who are not there. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's one that's
Oh, yeah.
it really is important, because
Yeah, it is.
growth is always uncomfortable, right?
Oh, yeah. I was like, I can speak to that one because going to Pride, it was my first Pride festival. I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous as all get out. So that, and then, like I said, it turned out to be a blast. I had so much fun. And, in the end, I was basically there alone. And I went around and I talked to people and went from station to station. It was really cool, but yeah, I was extremely nervous about going.
Yeah. Well, and see like our first exposure to anything is just like, it's a growing and learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Stop motion and stuff says, I have to go watch a show with the family. I'll definitely be here for the next stream. It was nice talking. Yes, thank you so much for
Yay.
joining us. Like,
Enjoy your show.
Enjoy your show, and you're always welcome here. You're
Yep,
always welcome
absolutely.
here. Sophia. Hello, Sophia. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. And Arpy says, I'm sad it's the last day of Pride Month. Me too. I think Pride should be all year though. Like, we should be celebrating LGBTQ plus history, equality, etc. all year long.
Yep.
Let's see. Learn from your mistakes. Very important. And sometimes that also involves feeling uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Amplify the voices and messages of marginalized groups. And last but not least, show up. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, showing up is important too. Yeah, that's something I think that's kind of like the performative thing. Like, I think showing up physically, but also showing up verbally in situations where you see negative things happening, right?
Yep.
So, well, we do have one other question to explore, and that is, what do you do when you discover that allies aren't really allies? They just say they are because they know that's what you want to hear.
Yeah, that's that fake as press on nails thing.
Oh my goodness. So the reason why I included this question is because I did a TikTok video about this earlier today, and I almost did a separate YouTube video about it, but I figured it would be good to talk about it in the context of being an ally. Over the past couple of years, like, obviously things have been very divisive, and sometimes people you think are allies, or people you have grown to believe are allies for ages, might do or say something that might prove otherwise, or might prove that their allyship is simply conditional, right? And I think for those of us who have been marginalized in any way possible, right? Like, we need to mentally prepare ourselves for moments like that, because and I'm not saying like don't trust anybody. Like obviously like invest trust in people, right? But also be mindful that privilege is a very fickle thing. Like
Mhm.
privilege is scary sometimes because people don't always see how deep their privilege may go, and that might impact what they do or say. And you are under no responsibility to always be the one educating them, right?
Right.
I've had to learn this the hard way, as you might imagine.
Mhm.
Yeah. So my answer to that would be, when you encounter people who are just being an ally because that's what they think you want to hear, um, just just keep your mind poised and think about the fact that, like, it's their privilege acting right now. It's their privilege that might be making them do or say this thing, and it's their responsibility to address that, and not always that weight shouldn't always fall on you. That's what I'm trying to say. I finally got it out. Oh my goodness. Heather, do you have any thoughts about that?
No, not really. I mean, that kind of says it all to me. I mean, it's, you know, like I said, the only thing I can even remotely come close to is, the situations I've gone through with, being heavy set, or what's going on right now with the Roe versus Wade. And I mean, just thinking about if I had that situation now, oh, I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't be able,
It's scary.
you know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. It's very scary. So, it's like there is that fear of the trend follower. Like,
Mm-hmm.
right now, it's trendy to be against the decision for Roe versus Wade, and there's a lot of people that are like jumping on that bandwagon. But there's that fear that the minute that bandwagon gets a little rocky, they're going to hop off and go the other direction. It's the
Yeah.
ones that are in for the long haul. They're usually the first ones in and they're the last ones out, if they ever
Yeah.
get out at all. So,
It's
yeah.
so true. It's so true. So at the end of the day, being an ally takes work. There's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
learning in it.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, you grow and learn with the people that you are an ally with. And I think that's what really builds strong connections between people.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like that's how our friendship has evolved too,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Hmm.
and I value that so much.
Yeah. And for those people out there that are afraid of being an ally for whatever the topic is, whether it's, you know, reproductive rights or anything, it's, yes, it's scary, but the fight's worth it. you
Yeah.
know the fight, we're fighting for people's right to be who they are, to be healthy. That the fight is worth it. It really is. And yes, you might get a few bruises and it might be scary sometimes, but at the end of the day, you have to ask the question of, would you want somebody to fight for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
That is, I think, the perfect point to end on.
Oh,
Wonderful.
yeah, thanks.
My friends, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for spending the last day of Pride Month with us. We really appreciate it. Remember that we love you and support
Hmm.
you and celebrate you for who you are.
Yep.
Okay. Have a good night and see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.